Hey friends, welcome back to the Puddcast with me, Jonathan Puddle. This is episode 31 and is the second part of the interview with Luke Gifford on transformative masculinity. Hope you enjoyed the first part. I've got some really incredible feedback from people. Like, this explained the last 10 years of my life. This just explained my entire masculinity. Really glad to hear those things. So thankful to have had Luke on the show. He's an incredible guy. So here we go with part 2. Our middle son, when he was like 4, he was getting into fights. Always fighting. And partly, maybe that's all 4-year-old boys. But to a certain extent, I was like, why is this kid fighting so much? Because he has a really gentle spirit. I know he doesn't have an aggressiveness, like an unhealthy aggressiveness. He's not, and I was going to say he's not angry because I have, again, such pre-programmed value statements about all these emotions. Anyway,
he's a boy. He's angry.
Boy. Yeah. And so anyway, what I realized was I think he just wants physical space. He just likes to be physical. He's not looking to hurt people. He's not looking to bring damage. He just wants the physicalness of it. And so
again, let's use the word aggression. I think it's important to use. It's not just physical, especially little boys, but it's also women. But listen, what's if he hasn't learned the value of his aggression and how to channel it by the time he reaches his teenage stage, where he gets hit with 20 times the testosterone that women get hit with, then what's he going to do? If he hasn't learned, it's okay to be aggressive, but this is an energy running through me. Now I have to learn to master or channel that energy. Where can I use it appropriately? Right? Where can I channel this aggression appropriately? Because if we try to get rid of that aggression, we're getting rid of the warrior, and that warrior is way down deep inside him, as it is inside of all of us. And if we try to get rid of it at a young age, it's going to come out adults in a destructive way.
Exactly. So I started wrestling him. And he came alive. And you know who else came alive? I came alive.
Daddy-o.
And I'm like a 12 out of 12 physical touch love language guy. And it unlocked it in my boy.
That inner child coming alive, man.
And it unlocked it in me. It unlocked it in him. And now, like 5-6 years later, that boy is a gift to my heart. I'll come home and have a hard day. Maybe I've had a bad day. I'll come in. And I don't even need to say very much. And his heart knows. And he'll come up to me and he'll hold me. And I'll cry into his hair. And he'll hold me. And I'm like, I could have punished you. I'm really glad I didn't. Like,
that's beautiful.
Good Lord, have mercy on what we might have done.
I need to learn from you. My son, he'll just walk up behind me and just punch the crap out of me. and then I'll have this huge smile on his face, right? Be playful, which is beautiful, and sometimes I get so mad, right?
Right.
It's like, he's just playing, but that really hurt. Oh my God. I've got a 6-year-old the size of most 8-year-olds and he is just strong as mess. And I went through a period where I noticed that thing too, where he needed to wrestle when he's a bit younger. And I really wanted to pull it out in him. I wanted it. So, hey, as long as you can get there, you can punch me in the face. Right. That was the deal we made. If you can make it, you can punch me in the face.
Yeah.
And there were a few times. There was one time he snuck up behind me and cold cocked the mess out of my face. And I literally grabbed him one arm and just threw him across the room because of my response. Like, it was just your natural response, right? And it scared the bejesus out of him. It scared him to death. And I was super intense, and then I just cracked a smile. And then he just started laughing. And so it's things like that for both of us where we both learn. Sure. We both.
But that's because it's like he suddenly got a glimpse or feared that he'd unleashed the monster. And how does he know the monster? Because it's inside of him too.
That's right.
Like my eldest was just driving us nuts a couple of weeks back. We had tried. It's like it's a new year. We're going to try and do a family devotion time before bed.
Good luck.
And yeah, exactly. And he was having no part of it. And I was like, I'm just going to send you to your room because you're bugging me. I think so much of our discipline is just revenge. And so
much of our discipline is just revenge.
So much of what we dress up as discipline, man, is just us wanting revenge and wanting to feel powerful again because our children have taken our power away. So you submit yourself and you get on your knees, right? I send him down to his room and I immediately followed him. And I knocked on the door and I said, come in. And he went, and I'm like, all right, I'm coming in. I lay on the bed beside him and I said, what's up, bud? And he's like, You know, I waited him out. I said, is there something going on, bud? Because it's actually been like 5 or 6 months and he's been increasingly disengaged spiritually. And he'd had a real spiritual vitality. And so he's like, yeah. Eventually he's like, yeah, something's going on. But I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it with you. I'm like, cool. I told him a story when I was a little bit older than him and I'd just done something stupid and lied to my parents about it and felt really bad. Just talked about, how good it felt to share that burden with someone. Just that I felt a lot better after I'd shared it with my parents. Mm-hmm. Eventually he rolls over and he's like, Daddy, I feel like there's something I want to tell you, but I'm a bit afraid. I'm a bit scared of it. I said, all right, cool, bud. Well, you can do whatever you like with that, mate.
Mm-hmm. Come on.
You can get over your fear of it if you want, or you can stay afraid of it, or I'll be here anyway, and nothing you can say will change the way I feel about you.
That's right.
And he said, Daddy, I feel like there's 2 creatures inside of me fighting.
Ooh.
There's a good one and there's a bad one. And his voice cracked and he said, I feel like the bad one's winning. And so, you could interpret that in a number of different ways, but we just had a little chat about the sinful nature. And I just said, look, Jesus conquered sin, bro. And he just lets us enjoy the victory. So we don't even have to try. It's actually just more about kind of giving up and then being honest. Giving up is an honesty step. I said, they say that those 2 creatures, the one that you feed is the one that wins kind of thing, and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, we had a little chat and a little pray, and we went back upstairs. And an hour later, the other kids are in bed, and I'm sitting at my laptop doing some work. And my older son is not very physical. Mm. And he comes and he sits down on the couch, like overlapping my leg with his leg, and puts his arm around my shoulder. And he's like, what you working on, Daddy? And I'm like, here is a kid who feels safe.
That's right.
Who feels valued, who feels seen, and who feels like someone is going to help him with the creatures inside. Mm-hmm. And all he wants to do in response is be with that man. And I'm just like, and all I wanted to do was send him to his room and be alone. Because I didn't want the hassle in my living room. And I'm like, God, thank you for helping me do the inner work on me.
And how many
I can help him do the inner work on him?
How many men didn't get that?
Oh, absolutely.
This is one of the biggest issues in men's work, and it's one of the biggest causes of addiction, of pornography, because as little boys, somebody amputated, right? That's the best way to say it to me. They amputated their sense of safety and connection.
Yeah. And
said, your reality isn't worth my time.
Exactly.
And to them, and then in their head, they go, well, the people that love me the most, and again, they did the best they knew how, but the way a little boy's head works, the way a child's head works, well, they whether we did something wrong or whether in many abusive situations, the child is made to believe they did something wrong. And then it's like they don't get a chance to talk it out. They don't get a chance to like, this is a real experience and I can't like verbalize it and talk it through, and there's nobody here. And so their sense of safety and connection gets cut off.
Exactly.
And in the future, that's where we have men that don't know how to feel safe and they don't know how to feel connection. And they have never learned that that's possible for them inside of their emotions and spiritual infrastructure.
Right. And so what does that man's wife say? I don't feel safe in my marriage. I don't feel a connection with my husband.
And because she is the voice of that inner child as well. And I have many men who in their shadow have put things like love and acceptance. And so they say, they project, you've never loved me. You don't love me. You don't want me as I am. Right. And so it becomes a part of that voice that sneaks out.
Yeah.
When they're feeling these things. It's such a fascinating thing how, just as anger and the things that we deem destructive be in the shadow, so can love and safety and acceptance and connection be in the shadow. And because men put them in the shadow, they never get to experience those things. And they build entire lives trying to find and fill that void instead of build the internal life to create that inside you, then go build a life that's coming from that, which is an important distinguishment to make. But for you, I mean, I love that story because your kid saw you not freak out at the monsters inside of him, but go, I'm not afraid of those monsters. You don't have to be either. Right? And so, so many people don't have that, man. It's funny. I had a very similar experience yesterday with my son. I mean, almost exactly that. He said no to something, and a series of things happened, like one right after the other. That was just the intensity heightened, and then he just went off the rails. And so I sent him to his room, and then he really went off the rails, and I sorted things out down there, and then I went up to his room. And I'm actually in his room right now, upstairs in my house. It's like a 700 square foot. It's huge. It's just our entire upstairs. So it's a lot of space. And I just sat in the room on the other side of the room, and he kept going, and he would go away. I don't want you in here. And I sit here. Finally got to, what do you want? What do you want from me? I was like, I don't want anything from you, man. I'm just going to be in here with you.
Come on.
I don't want you in here. Go away. Nope. I'm not going anywhere. What do you want from me? I don't want. Well, then what do you want me to do? It's like, I really don't want you to do anything other than what you're doing. I'm just here to let you know that you're loved no matter what you're doing. And I'm not going anywhere. And we just hang. And finally, and my son, I don't know if you know it, the Enneagram.
Yep.
So my son, we're leaning pretty strongly toward him being a 5.
Sure.
So he's very like his you can watch his the mechanics in his mind turning when he's trying to, and he figures stuff out that way. And so I just said, trying to speak his language, interesting misunderstanding of what many of us as Christians have been taught, that raise a child in the way they should go. The actual original is more to the spirit of raise a child in their way and never depart, which puts the consciousness back on the parent, not on the child. And so knowing that, I just said, okay, let's come here. I said, let's just talk through. I was like, I love your anger, man. And I just laugh at him. I was like, it's amazing. Like, your ability and your power is unbelievable, and I love it. And I don't want it to go anywhere. I just want us to be able to use that for productive, generative things. Like, I want you to get what you want, because sometime in the future that's going to be amazing for you. But let's not use it destructively against other human beings. And so I said, let's talk through what just happened downstairs, moment by moment. And I want you to see if there's something else in you that would choose a different way. So then he feels shame. We go through one part of the story where he did something he's ashamed of, but he projects the shame onto the moment with me, where he says, I don't want to do that embarrasses me.
Sure.
And it's like,
I feel exposed.
Do you feel shame about what you did? And I was like, that's appropriate shame. That shame is actually guiding you how to do something differently next time that makes you feel more esteem and more confident in yourself. You actually feel more loving about yourself. So we just walked through that process, and it was, he saw that he could make different choices, and he saw that there was another part in him, And for me, it was a very, I was just so proud of him, and I was also proud of myself, because there are times in my life where I have been just a rear end to my son, right? Where I have just, and a lot of times, not even about revenge, but about just not knowing what to do.
Oh yeah.
Like, I just I don't know what to do in these situations. I feel like I'm a kid most of the time trying to parent. Let's teach my kid how to be an adult,
I remember when my kids were born, and I did the math and understood that my dad was about the same age that I was, and thinking how little I have figured out.
Oh, gosh. All
of a sudden, I'm like, and just grace poured out of my being from my parents.
It's really true, man.
I sat down to write this morning. I'm going to say this morning, by the time that this podcast goes up, this post may already be up. I sat down to write something else, and something else began to flow, and so I jumped over to it, and I just suddenly, began to realize just exactly what you just said, that it's like we were all told we were too loud, we were all told we're too boisterous. And now I'm recognizing that communication is something that actually I'm meant to have. It took time to work out the rough edges and so on. But I'm like, it took me, this is what I was writing. I said, it took me time to learn that volume isn't the most powerful form of communication.
Mm-hmm.
Or that volume isn't the most powerful way to communicate. And then I was like, man, what if we as parents help our children understand their power and understand all that? What if we can strategically ignore certain behaviors, not sweat the small stuff, so that we can dive in,
Mm-hmm.
and help those little people become big people on the inside. And I was like, man, that's it. And I've been chewing over this last couple of weeks. Like, I have this terrifying suspicion that God spends most of his time ignoring my bad behavior. And that's terrifying because it has ramifications for what I should probably be doing to my children's bad behavior.
My definition of acceptance is nothing needs to change. Right?
So
to let that sink in, nothing needs to change. And if we can begin in that, right, instead of immediately thinking something needs to be different from what's happening right now, nothing needs to change. And in saying this, how much drama do we as parents juice up in moments of where our kids live a drama, and they don't know any different.
Well, that's just it, because we see so much of it as, like you said, as misbehavior, right? Like, we filter it as misbehavior. Yeah. It's so fascinating. When I talk to people about, I talk a lot about parenting and discipline, especially. I've written as well in my forthcoming book about undiscipline, just because it's so different from what we've kind of been raised with. But as soon as I talk to people about moving away from corporal punishment and moving away from harsh discipline and timeouts and all this kind of stuff, people say, so what? I should let my child run across the road? Every time that is the response. And it's so illuminating, because a child running across the road is not like, they're not being disobedient.
How many children
in the sense of like,
do you know they got hit by cars? Not that, I don't know. Not that many, right?
No.
Not that many.
I mean, there are tragedies. I remember as a kid, there was a kid who got hit by a car and killed. But it's like, and even if it happens, it's not happening out of a kid's like desire to do wrong.
That's right.
Like, this is a child exploring the world around them, maybe exploring the boundaries of their parents, maybe exploring what obedience looks like in a certain context. But it's not like I woke up today. I don't think any of us wake up today and say, I'm going to be evil today. I'm going to, in a vacuum, just cause pain. That is all I want to do, and there's no trigger for it. I just woke up today and decided to be evil. I think it's all reaction. And like you said, the drama, man, like, if we could look at our kids and understand that maybe their noisiness doesn't need to change, I think you got it. I think that acceptance thing is it.
Yeah, and I think most of the issues with our kids are, I want to say this as clearly as I possibly can. Most of our problems with our kids aren't our kids, but it's our problems with our sadness, our problems with our own grief, right? Our own depression,
exactly,
our own stuff. And if we are buying into the drama of their lives, we are not looking at the drama of our own inner world.
That's it.
Right? And it's causing a whole lot of extra drama, right?
That's it.
So an unhappy parent is going to perpetuate unhappiness in their child. We had my daughter had a yeast infection. She's 3 years old. So that's just another level of intensity in her life as it is. And we experiment a lot with deep diving our own stuff whenever our kids get sick, or whenever we're noticing something going on in our kids emotionally. The first thing we try to do and want to do, especially if it's patterned, is to see if there's something inside of us that is causing this to manifest in our children. And so, and it was a fascinating thing. I deep dived. I did an emotional deep dive on myself after like And sometimes, we get just caught in our life. We're doing what we're doing. And it took me almost a week to just go, oh, wait a second. I may be causing this, and this is the way that my wife and I had a conversation this morning about it. And we were kind of going back and forth about something, trying to find the root of it. And I just go, you know what? Once again, I already know what the thing is. I'm the nucleus of this situation. As the man, I assume responsibility for all of it, even the stuff that the metaphysical stuff that you wouldn't even imagine, or in my kids, I want to assume the responsibility from a powerful place, not from a shaming place. But are there some practices in my life that I can do spiritually and emotionally that will actually set them free from having to carry the burden for the family? And if dis-ease is happening in their bodies, is there something in me that I'm not feeling through, so that it doesn't have to manifest in their body? Let me look here. Let me look inside my own body, my own heart, and see if there isn't some emotional cesspool that I haven't accessed yet. So let me use this as that.
And I've been suspecting for a while, maybe that's all that scripture means about being the leader of your home. I'm like, maybe the only privilege that I get is to apologize first and to own it and see myself as that nucleus, like you said, which is not like the world orbits around me, but
Well, and that's, to me, like God. The scripture says God, Jesus, husband, wife, child. Yeah. That's not an authority over. That is a stewardship of energy towards. Right?
That's good.
God is clear in his energy and direct. Jesus did the work that he needed to do to become clear in his energy. Now it's my responsibility as a man to do let's start just by ownership. This is all mine. God says, this is all mine. I'm going to be my best, and I'm going to give it my love. Then Jesus goes, I got to figure out how to do that. And then he did that. And then he became the next expression, a conduit of love. And I'm not talking like the fundamentalist definition of love where we've got to do. I'm talking like fully open to owning all the crap. This is, what if I were to say all the crap is mine?
I mean, literally.
Which is what Jesus did.
Yeah.
Now that's the husband's. And by him doing that, it makes him the conduit of the love energy that passes down to the wife. And then the wife does the work. Okay, this is all mine, right? And so, when the wife is complaining, it's never really about the words that she's saying or the specific things she's complaining about. She's really going, husband, go into your heart and find out what's hurting in yourself that's wanting you to go to sleep, to not pay attention, to not be the love that you are.
Yeah. Right?
And then when the children are doing something, often it can point back to the wife not doing the work inside herself, inside her heart, to be the conduit of that love. So you're right. I mean, you're right, in my opinion, in my very strong opinion.
I think this podcast has expressed some very strong, wonderful opinions that I'm high-fiving my heart about. Just before we got on the mic this morning, we had a little dialogue over Instagram. You had posted an image that said, humility is a byproduct of accepting your greatness.
Mm-hmm.
And then just said discuss, like you didn't care. And so I had commented, I said, when I see my greatness as designed by God, then it's not about me as such. My greatness isn't because of me, but my greatness is waiting for me to grasp, to cherish, to unleash it.
I have an agenda. I have a strong agenda in this, so continue.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Of course you do. Yeah, no one says discuss without an agenda. And then you replied, what if it actually is about you? What if God designed it to specifically be about you? And what if that's the point and your self-esteem depended upon it?
Mm-hmm. It sounds so much better when it comes out of your mouth.
Well, that's just because I was born in New Zealand and then moved to Canada and have this rich, mixed accent. I think in many ways that's what I want to believe, or that's what when I said it's not about me as such, I think there's a part of me that's like, yeah, God is greater than me. And a part of me wants to remain acknowledging that. But the one who's greater than me created me and made me look like him. And I feel like perhaps that's the whole point of life, to learn to be him.
Essence, I talk a lot about essence, the core expression of who you are. And my definition of that is God's goodness through you, for you. And then I have a full stop there. Now, I understand more of it, but I full stop there. Because my agenda, even in this, my agenda is that we aren't quick. We need to slow down and become very slow in handing off what has been given to us. We don't even get a chance to let our cups fill up. So if we don't do that, people don't get the overflow. They get what belongs to us.
Interesting. Right? Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where let's hold it in until it is bursting. Like, what if we were okay with the discomfort of tension? And what if you were to, say for a year, you were to completely focus on how good you were without sharing any of that goodness with anybody, just as a practice to see how full you could become and to see if you could reach a point where you literally could not help yourself but explode. How much deeper into the root system of your being would a sense of your own goodness become? Right? And here's why. I talk to so many people who live with the sense that they are wrong at their core.
Yeah, right.
That they are sinful in their nature. Now, I believe a little differently than a lot of people. But if I'm made in God's image right at the beginning, that's my nature, right? And I have a shadow. I have a part of me that's developed because life took a crap on me.
Yeah.
My work now is to uncover that shadow because it's not evil, right? Those things aren't evil. Keeping them unseen and unloved can become evil.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, that's my agenda. My agenda is, whoa. This guy made it all about you. He made it. Let's full stop. You are great. That greatness is for you to fall in love with yourself. Full stop. Don't give it away. Giving away too soon has caused a lot of false humility.
That's good. Arthur Burke.
Oh yeah. We bless the spirits of our babies every night.
So Arthur Burke says, "You are part of God's gift to you."
Come on, I love that.
I remember the first time I read it, I'm like, oh, there's a typo in this book. And I honestly thought he had made a mistake. Then I read back over it, and then I sat there, and then I cried.
How do you turn the boat that's almost the size of America? Like, how do you change the mindset? How do you change some of the core fundamental beliefs of an entire group of people that have been taught that they are worthless?
Yeah.
That they need something to give them, that they are not love at their core.
Yeah, you know what I think helps? And I don't know what you're going to say to this. I know what a lot of people are going to say to this. I think it helps when a massive capitalistic company accidentally tunes into the will of God and makes an ad about shaving products that's not even about shaving products, that encourages men to step up. I watched that Gillette ad and I cried and I said, cool. Now a chasm has been opened and I'm allowed to talk about it, and it's a cultural piece that can be discussed. And I imagine, and I already know, people are hating on this for all kinds of different reasons. And some of those reasons I can understand. In terms of, this is a company looking to make money, I get it. But there's something in there that said to me, you can put a conversation in front of 5 million people, or 10 million people, or 100 million people.
Right.
And a man can look at that and can choose to be offended. Or a man can look at that and can choose to say, I can make a change. And I can choose to be as powerful as I want to be.
And it's an interesting conversation because I think a man can be offended and still want to make a change.
Yes.
Right? Like, the juice of that offense will make him pay attention. And that's a lot of the way men work. Like, I need you to get me a little pissed off so that I'll really invest in myself, which is what a warrior is, like, deeply connected to a cause. And, today is Martin Luther King Day. My kid's out of school. Martin Luther King Day. He is a guy that you can look at and go, this guy was angry, and he was offended by lots of things. And that offense drove him even deeper into his love. And that love is what drove him then to change the world. And I think the conversation is happening. It is, it's around me everywhere. Maybe because I'm paying attention to it, that I'm seeing it more often, but it's becoming much more of a prevalent conversation, especially around men becoming the nucleus of our problems.
Yeah.
Right. And if men would be willing to go, we are the nucleus of the problem, which means we can be the solution. Yeah.
Have you gotten into any of Jordan Peterson's stuff?
He keeps coming to me, man. I have a number of my guys that are in my program are reading him.
Yeah.
And have sent me snippets of things they've read that have pertained to some of the stuff that we've gone through. But I've never read anything. I've listened to some podcasts, but I've never read anything.
He's a phenomenon, right? And so there's a broad range of stuff that I might be referring to when I say
proud Canadian.
And proud Canadian. There's a broad range of possibilities when you say, I bring up Jordan Peterson, well, that must mean you're a conservative. I'm not. And if I say I'm not a conservative, that must mean you're a liberal. I'm not. I like Brian Zahnd. He said, I eschew labels as much as possible.
That's funny.
But in reading, I've read half of his book, 12 Rules for Life. Mm-hmm. And that's the sense that I walked away from. I get to own me, and I perhaps should. And if I did, I might have a different experience of life.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had a different experience of life, all those people around me might have a different experience of me and a different experience of life.
Right.
And surely that's good.
It's amazing. It's amazing what ownership does, especially in a man's life. I had a I had a trauma when I was a kid. I was actually hit by a truck. I'm one of those kids that ran out into the street and got hit by a car. So, and that trauma became a Gordian knot deep, deep, deep in my psyche. And it defined 30 years of my life. I'm about to die. I'm in big trouble. These are the phrases. I'm in big trouble. I can't move. I'm in big trouble. I'm about to die. Like, that's right before it hits me, right? And that became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The victimization of that, and this is where I'm going with that. The victim in me ran the show for a long time. These things happen to me. I'm not powerful. These things happen to me. Everybody, the truck is to blame, and anything that feels like that truck in my life is to blame, not me, because I'm a victim of the truck. Like,
yeah, right.
Even when it came to my wife, even my wife came to represent that truck, and so my hatred became about her. Yeah, right. And it took me letting my mind melt. It took me. I believed she hated me. I believed I hated her. That we had never loved each other. And I told that to her face. And I was in our marriage. I was with other women during this process where we were separated, right at the beginning of it, and then when we separated. And I blamed her for all that. Right? My perception was so frozen. I was so locked up, and was not able to own any of the things that I caused, any of the toxicity in our marriage. And I made it all about her, and she became my scapegoat. And it wasn't until I spent 2 months almost every night. I was in this little apartment, and my mind would, just like you said, yours was shattering. My mind would melt. I would literally feel my mind, all the barriers in my mind, all the definitions in my mind, all the things in my mind would just melt away. And down in that space, and this all began by God asking me a question. I wonder what your life would be like without me. I wonder who you would be without me. And now I got baptized when I was 6. Like, I've been pretty dedicated, to a life with God, and never had any backslidden times in my life, quote unquote, as they call them. And for me, as a rebel and as a mystic, I was like, well, that'd actually be pretty important for me to know. Like, if I really want to know about God and know who God is and have a relationship, it's really important to know what it's like not to have Him. My question back to God, I wonder who I am without you, man. I'm down to find that out. And I had no clue that was what was actually going to happen. And I lived a whole period of my life without any sense of God. And not just that, but I lived a period of my life fully on, I don't need this God I've been given. I don't need you. Right? It makes me think sometimes of Pharaoh, where God told Moses, go free the slaves, but then it says, but God's spirit came on Pharaoh when he said no. Right. Which is confusing. Can be confusing, but also you think about that story. Pharaoh, his heart became hard because God made it hard.
Yeah,
that all worked
sure.
inside of his own mind. So it has to make sense to him. So it makes sense to him that this is the right decision. For me, it was all this was happening. And then I got to a point where in the middle of that, the whole infrastructure of the way my mind thought and made and put itself together melted. And I was riding, just like you taught, riding a stallion. I was riding the edges of insanity is what it felt like. Am I going nuts right now? Am I insane? What? I feel like my mind is falling apart. Everything's just, all the sense of any walls are gone. This is the most bizarre, strange experience I've ever had. And it was in this dark abyss, and this is what it felt like, a dark, empty abyss, that I began to feel my worthlessness, my powerlessness, and my intense loneliness. And it was down in here that in that mud I began to just fashion, and I visualized this. I'm alone, and I'm going to fashion these bricks out of this mud of loneliness, and I'm going to build something out of it. And I began to do that, and it was as I began to do that, then as I built some sense of myself again from worthlessness, powerlessness, loneliness, that I began to feel a sense of power, and a sense of witness, and a sense of worth being built from these things, from worthlessness, powerlessness, loneliness. And then the proverbial, since you've asked me to keep it clean, crap hit the fan. And on Good Friday morning at 12:02, my wife called and asked me the most direct question she could have asked me: have you been with another woman? And so Good Friday, so over the next 3 days, I had to tell her about the 3 women that I've been with. And I knew now is the time. If this is ever going to happen, we have to. And it was on Easter Sunday morning that I got a text saying, you've lost everything, from her and from a man that I would have considered, and I still consider a father to me, spiritual father. And they both said, you've lost everything. You're lost. You lost your wife. You lost your kids. You lost everything. And it was in that I believed it. I have done the worst and been the worst, and now I've lost everything. And it was in that moment, about an hour later, that I felt, and I've looked this scripture up now, but I felt God clothe me. You have been to the bottom of who you are. You have made something of yourself by yourself. This is that man that found the worthlessness, powerlessness, and loneliness and did something with it. That's who you are. That's the man that you are. And I'm proud of that, man. Now I'm going to clothe you with this divinity. I'm going to clothe you with this. I'm back, right? Put the mantle back on you. And I felt it. Like, it was the most bizarre, crazy experience for me. And that night, Krista called. She said, what's your plan? What are you doing? Let me go back one more step. Then I had to tell all this to my dad. On Easter Sunday, it's my dad. And this is life-changing for me. I tell him everything. I just spill everything. And my dad says to me, he doesn't berate me, doesn't get upset with me, doesn't get mad at me. He says, Luke, you've always been too hard on yourself. How can I help you? Which is very much a voice of God to me. And which is just, for me, was beautiful. And then that night, Krista called, what's your plan? And I said, I love you, and I've given you everything, including my hatred. Right? And I've come to terms with my hatred. And you are God's representation. You are God as unconditional love to me. That's what I think I said. And so I'm coming to you. She was off, like she was hours away. And I got in the car and took off. And it was fascinating because this is all my initiation process. This was all me coming to terms with the darkest parts of myself. And it was all me living out the worst that I had in me, which is what a man would be without God, right?
There it is.
And then from that worst, being able to find value and find acceptance, right? And it was like my whole life I'd lived not knowing what acceptance was. I have no idea I just lived with this sense of shame, and I'd never done anything wrong. Now I've done all these things wrong, and they are what they are. Yeah. And I had to go, well, here we are. Luke, I accept you. These are a part of who you are. Doesn't make you any less loved. I love you. So if anybody else wants to love you, they're just cherries on the top of the love you have for yourself already, even in the darkest of who you are. And then our whole life changed. It's just, a man was born, right? And then this man, my deepest call now is to open the hearts of men. And
absolutely.
So that's my story in that process of being a victim and moving into an ownership, the deep ownership of this energy of love, and what it took for me to do that.
So rich. Thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah.
I remember sitting at my table 2 years ago. I just moved into this house. My wife and I are pursuing becoming adoptive and foster parents. And one of the things we had to fill out was a list of every address I'd ever lived in since birth. And I got to something like 20. And I was like, flip, that's a lot. And it was recently. Anyway, two years ago, I'm sitting in my living room for some reason thinking about moving around so much.
Yeah.
And I felt God say to me, what would your life be like if you didn't believe everything was about to be taken away from you?
Ooh. Man, oh man. That's intense.
I just sat there and I was like, wow, shut up, God. I don't believe that. And I successfully lived in that lie for about 4 seconds. And then it was just like, oh my God, my entire life I have been pretty sure that everything was about to be whisked away. Why? Because of terrible abuse? No, not at all. Because my parents were missionaries, and because we got picked up and moved around and moved around and moved around. And there was no sin involved. It was just the heart of a little kid.
But some idea, some perspective formed in your little kid, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just a signal overload, more than my little heart could handle. And I started looking back at my life, and I realized like everything in my whole life is built around this fear that everything's about to be whisked away. Why do I talk so much? Why do I dominate a conversation? Mm-hmm. Why do I dive into relationships so fast, especially with women? Like, because everything's about to be whisked away, and this is all I've got. And I sat with that for the better part of 2 or 3 years and said, okay, help me undress that. Take me back. And I didn't feel like it was a very conscious process. I just sort of said, okay, I'm willing.
Yeah.
And
which is probably the most dangerous and beautiful thing you can say. I'm willing.
Yeah. And then about 3 months ago, I was doing a heart sync inner healing session with a guy down your way. I won't explain it in detail because it's a very, very long story. But the end result, towards the end, I got this picture in my mind of a coffin buried under concrete, and it began to resolve in detail. And there was a child in this coffin, and I'm kind of like, this is weird. And my counselor was like, it's actually really common that we bury parts of ourselves or lock them off, and this part of me begins to get flesh and blood, and there's a 5-year-old kid in this coffin. And the vision continues, and basically I realize this is 5-year-old me, the dreamer, full of passion and life before any of this. And this is the part that the rest of my psychological framework doesn't trust, because he's fearless, because he's bold, because he dreams audacious dreams. And I'm sitting here over Skype with my counselors, bawling my eyes out, as the rest of the parts of me kind of realign and forgive and repent and accept this 5-year-old kid. And it's like, God's like, that's what you were like before you believed that everything was going to be taken away from you.
Come on. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Luke, would you pray for us?
I would. But I'm going to talk to you about how I pray.
Please.
I have a practice that I do where, your heart has a part, your physiological heart has a part called the intrinsic cardiac nervous system. And it is like a little brain inside your heart. And it holds memories. It controls the amount of blood flow and the openness of the arteries and veins, so blood and water can get to the body. And so it also controls the electromagnetic current of the heart. And the heart's electromagnetic current is the only organ in your body that can bring all the other electromagnetic currents of all the other organs into rhythm with its rhythm. The other ones can't do that, just your heart. And that's a physiological fact. How do you do that? The quickest way to do it is for us to put our hands on our hearts. Put our hands on our chest where our hearts would be. Close our eyes. Focus all your attention on your heart and your chest. And then begin to feel gratitude. Whatever the feeling of gratitude is to you, feel it. You might picture your youngest child or one of your children, and that's the way gratitude is presenting itself to you right now. You might feel thankful for a job, or you might feel thankful for yourself, that you exist right here and now. But we imagine that all the energy from everywhere in our bodies is being sucked in, pulled in intentionally to our hearts. And the deeper we can focus our attention on our hearts, the stronger our hearts become. And then I just imagine that everybody listening to this experience feels what I feel. I hope they know how loved they are. I hope they know deeply in their roots how grateful I am that they exist right now in this moment. I will, within myself, that all of them know that they are being held inside my system, my awareness, my spiritual world, and that with everything I have, I am pulsing love through myself for them. A love that would reveal to them their love. A love that would transform them in a moment. That they would know that they are worthy of their own love. That they would know that they are worthy of their own gratitude. That they would know that they are worthy of God's love. and that would be something that sets off a fire in them to find out, if they haven't already, how valuable they are as a being here on earth. And because I don't want that to end, I just let it be open into my inner universe. And I just say yes to it.
You've been listening to the Puddcast with me, Jonathan Puddle. I've dedicated my life to helping people access the freedom that God designed for them and to love others sacrificially, just like God does. Basically, I think we're meant to live like God himself, and I want to help you get there. This podcast is part of that, and every week I interview people to dig into the rich soul of a Jesus-centered life. Make sure to check out some of the earlier episodes. I've had everyone from Olympic athletes to local friends to famous DJs and major Christian leaders like Brian Zahn, Priscilla Shirer, and Sheila Walsh. If this podcast has been a blessing to you, head over to jonathanpuddle.com and grab my free book, You Are the Solution to Someone's Problem. I'm pretty sure it's going to brighten your day. And if you enjoy that too, then would you consider supporting me on Patreon? You can get one-on-one spiritual coaching from me, as well as a private supporters-only podcast with unique content that I don't make available to the public. There's a number of other benefits there as well. You'll find me at patreon.com/JonathanPuddle. Thank you so much for listening, and may you be filled with grace and peace from the Lord God, who created all things, holds all things together, and is personally invested